get started.
Okay, so today we are here with Marshall Lawson and Chase Brannon, both whom are candidates for the State House representative. And we're going to start with an opening statement alphabetically. Mr. Brannon, you are first, so you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you all for having me. My name is Chase Brannon. I'm running for State House District 10. I'm born and raised right here in Baker County. I grew up showing cows and pigs all my life. And graduated from Baker County High School. I was 16th out of 300 kids. I also graduated from Florida Gateway College, magna cum laude. I also graduated from the University of Florida with a degree in agricultural education and communication with a minor in sales and management and advocacy. Yes, that's quite a mouthful right there.
Yes, it is.
It is. And also, I had the fortunate honor after University of Florida to be selected as one of 20 Florida gubernatorial fellows under Governor Ron DeSantis. And I was selected to serve at the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, working to reopen the state of Florida under the COVID-19 lockdown. So after I did that for about a year, Governor Ron DeSantis selected me, and I was the only one selected for a Leadership Service Award and was asked to serve as Federal Relations Coordinator for Governor Ron DeSantis in his Federal Relations Office. After that concluded, then the governor's team asked me to join the governor's re-election campaign. And then I was the third ever hire as a North Central Florida Regional Director, managing the area from here all the way to Tallahassee. So I did that. Then a gentleman named CFO Jimmy Petronas, who was our Florida's Chief Financial Officer, asked me to join as a statewide political director. So I got to do that. Then after both men got elected, I got to join Chief Financial Officer Jimmy Petronas in his official office as Director of Intergovernmental Affairs, dealing with local, rural, municipal type issues. And that meant I dealt with your local elected officials, your sheriffs, your fire chiefs. So I know what they deal with. My campaign is about one thing, it's about addressing the cost of living. Your property taxes are too high, your insurance is too high, your grocery bill is too high, your gas is too high. And I want to be the guy that brings meaningful tax relief to make sure that, people can survive every day. It feels like, people like us are getting squeezed in the middle of the state of Florida. We need to do something about it. But we also need to be smart about taking care of our small counties, Baker, Bradford, Union, Columbia, and not say Rockland County would count as a physically constrained county, but they need to be taken care of. And that's why I want to be the guy to take care of those things.
All right, Chase. And so next up, we have Marshall Lawson. You have 2 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a small commercial citrus grower, I'm an officer in the Florida State Guard, Governor's Guard. I earned my law degree from the University of Florida, I'm a former collegiate decathlete. And some of the reasons why I'm running is because every day the Florida that I love, the Florida that we love, loses 800 to 1,000 acres of our agricultural lands and our wild Florida. I've been giving presentations for the past 6 years on the loss of these things and what it means for us as a people and what we can do about it in Tallahassee to keep more green on the ground. I'll be your most Florida first candidate when it comes to protecting our agricultural lands and wild Florida, fighting preemption that takes control away from local municipalities from determining their own zoning and planning rules and regulations. We need to be utilizing our conservation easement programs too. I'm running because taxpayers need an advocate in Tallahassee, not a cash cow for out of control local government. And I've been fighting property tax increases in down south in Bradford County, the county just south of here, and for the past 5 years against out of control local government. And in Tallahassee, I will put the taxpayers first. I'm running because we need strong border security, strong communities and strong law enforcement starts at our southern border. It concerns me when we have politicians that try to differentiate between criminal illegals and illegals. If you came here illegally, that's a state and federal crime. We shouldn't be waiting around for you to commit a second crime before you're deported. We don't give such preferential treatment to our own American citizens. Overall, we need Florida first policies that put Floridians above the rest of the world that may want to move here in 10 years or 10 days because we have a duty to keep Florida great for all those who are currently here. And we cannot afford to make it hell for everybody who wants to be here. Would love your support in this Republican primary coming up on August 18th. And I'm Marshall Lawson.
What is your favorite coffee drink?
Coffee drink. Ooh, it's funny. It's pretty much a black coffee. I really don't do no embellishments. I'm kind of straight to the business. That's why I do black coffee. It's simple. I just want the energy. I want the caffeine. Nothing else. I'm efficient.
There you go. All right. And Marshall, what about you?
Yes, dark black coffee. Sweetwater is probably my top brand, or Cafe Bustelo if we're being cheap, which it's not too cheap anymore though. Things have gone up.
What leadership initiatives have you personally taken on that voters could look to as an example of how you lead the district if elected?
Yes. Well, I've been an advocate on multiple fronts here in the district and across the state of Florida for the past 15 years, when it comes down to being a taxpayer advocate, defending our historic monuments, defending our Second Amendment. I led up the charge in Georgia at a school I went to briefly, for open carry for law-abiding adults before it spread across our southern states. I've worked to get the anti-Christian, anti-Western filth out of our county libraries. I've worked to get, and I've introduced the strongest pro-life resolutions in the state of Florida here in 2 of our North Florida counties. So being a citizen advocate, and we need a citizens legislature that, and one that represents the district, not represents Tallahassee to the district.
Absolutely. Well, I kind of go back to my time at the Department of Business and Professional Regulation, where we kind of hoped to reopen the state of Florida. Of course, everybody remembers when COVID-19 was going around, we were locked down for about 2 or 3 weeks. And I remember going there and trying to figure out what we do to help reopen the state of Florida. That was opening restaurants, I was opening coffee shops, barber shops, trying to figure out how we get people back to work. And of course, now I've worked for Governor Ron DeSantis in multiple capacities in federal relations, making sure that communication was done correctly between our federal partners and our state partners, to make sure it was done. And of course, Governor Ron DeSantis got elected because of his team, and I was fortunate to be a part of that. CFO Jim Petronas was also elected because of my work. While I did always work statewide, and also when I was at the Department of Financial Services, I got to deal with a ton of appropriations for fire trucks and fire stations all across the state. Of course, as you know, Baker County got a couple of fire trucks and fire stations. And of course, as you know, there was a problem where we were trying to get appropriated for a fire truck, but the fire trucks didn't get made in time. I had to take up a charge to make sure, hey, we can't let this appropriation go through. So we had to extend that grant program to make sure that we got the truck. And of course, Baker County was able to get their trucks, after all that. So that's part of my leadership initiatives that I've undertaken. Of course, with Governor Ron DeSantis being the most conservative governor in the state of Florida, I'm proud to have helped his charge and then make sure that we are the most pro-life, the most anti-tax, and the most pro-Second Amendment state that we have in the state of Florida.
What kinds of growth and development would you like to encourage or discourage for this district?
That's a good question. So I'm for smart growth. I'm not for out-of-control development. I do think, certainly if we're going to build something, we got to have the infrastructure in place. We got to have good roads. We got to have good sewer, good water. But we also got to be smart about where we build houses, how close homes are going to be, how big your acreage is going to be. That's kind of, and fortunately, that's kind of where home rule kind of comes into play to say, hey, we don't want this out of control development here. We just want good, honest development without overwhelming our county resources. As we know, we're going to put in 300 plus homes in one area that overwhelms our school systems. And we got to make sure that we are able to accommodate that. And that's where you got to have a legislature come in and say, hey, we got to be able to put the brakes on this project in order to make sure you have these resources first. And that's how I feel about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. I'm excited to have the question. So I want to facilitate homegrown businesses here in Baker County throughout the district. And we need to be putting local folks first ahead of corporations moving in. Unfortunately, in Tallahassee, we have an environment that encourages and incentivizes companies to move here and gives them tax incentives at the discouragement of our local businesses. We're talking about Enterprise Florida, and it gives a disadvantage to our local businesses. I like to see businesses that benefit and expand on our culture, not take away. I've talked about it a few times on the campaign trail. When I was putting irrigation in during this last freeze this year, I was using Sanderson pipe, made here in Baker County. That's something that helps encourage our agrarian economy. In the legislature, unlike the current representative, I will not support Live Local Acts, Blue Ribbon Projects, and agricultural enclave bills that preempt local municipalities from determining their own zoning and planning rules and regulations. Housing developments, unfortunately, are a net drain on our economy. For every dollar we get for new residential development, it costs $1.25 to pay for the EMS, fire, and police. So ag industry is a net plus. Also, I don't want to see Baker become a bedroom community for Jacksonville. That is when you have a net drain on the taxpayer too, and your taxes go up. Like I said, housing developments being that net drain. So we need to encourage by getting, regulation out of the way, getting and lowering and eliminating some taxes, homegrown businesses here in Baker County and throughout the district.
So do you have a rebuttal on
I
this?
do.
Okay,
Well,
1 minute.
first of all, you're not running against the current representative. You're running against me. And second of all, he has never voted for a blue ribbon bill or anything like that. We've always been pro, small county, pro rural community. So I don't know where that's coming from. But secondly, we got to make sure that we have the resources that we need. That's why, some of these houses are where people need to come to live. We're always growing. This country's been growing for 250 years. We got to make sure we accommodate for that. It's not like our population is shrinking, it's growing bigger. So we got to make sure we accommodate everybody, but we got to do it smart. And of course, you got to remember you run against me, not my old man.
Well, I would add that, yes, current leadership has certainly supported preemption of local municipalities, and I would do it differently in the legislature, that is for sure. Like I said, we need a citizen advocate in Tallahassee, not somebody telling us, not representing Tallahassee to us, like I said.
Given the ongoing drought and the springs drying up, I saw a post today that says one of the springs, the flow has just practically stopped. What would you do as a state lawmaker to help solve this problem?
Well, I think we need an environmental standard, quite frankly, that looks to our aquifer to see if our carrying capacity can continue bringing on 1,000 people to the state of Florida every day. The legislature keeps kicking the can down the road. They won't deal with the issue, and it's a real issue that we're going to come to here in Florida. And we're experiencing it now. The Withlacoochee, we lose so much water is taken by Atlanta already for their growing suburban population, and we lose so much down the Alapala from the nuclear power plants in Alabama that there's very little downriver for the state of Florida. And so on top of droughts, we need Florida first policies. Like I said, let me back up. We need an environmental standard that looks to our aquifer to see if our carrying capacity can continue sustaining 1,000 people to the state of Florida every day. And if it can't, we need to use the police powers vested to us in the U.S. Constitution to put a temporary freeze on the amount of people moving to the state until our aquifer can come back to healthy levels, because we have to put Florida first. And that's exactly what I'll do in the legislature.
Well, as any legislator is about to try to figure out, good solutions. And of course, we got to be able to interact with our partners. That's water management districts and things like that. And of course, water is really low. We've seen it in our rivers and our springs. But it's so much to say that, our water management district has not seen any danger yet. It's actually not the lowest that the water's ever been. I think the 90s was the last time the water was ever the lowest. But it's not to say there's things that we can do about it. But there is no declared emergency about how low the water is. But again, we got to make sure that we're well ahead of the curve on it. And that's where legislators can come in and say, there's a solution to this. It's certainly not trying to replace the water. It's about trying to make sure the springs and your aquifers can recharge over a good time period. But again, like I said, there's no emergency that's been declared by our water management districts. And they do work with our agricultural partners, our businesses, but we also can't be restricting water usage on behalf of our farmers and our ranchers, because they need to use it to be able to feed their crops, feed their cows, feed their pigs. So we got to be smart about how we say this. So.
And are you in favor of more data centers in Florida? Why or why not?
I'm not, because I've seen the data on it. It consumes too much water. It consumes too much electricity. Thankfully, the legislature and the governor has been ahead of the curve when it comes to data, when it comes to electrical consumption from these data centers. So we don't have to worry about that. So your utility bills won't go up as a result. But I'm not in favor of it, especially as, they create a lot of noise. They're a nuisance to neighborhoods. And certainly the water consumption is a question that we need to be talking about. And of all the data I've seen, I am not for them.
Yeah, absolutely opposed to data centers, taking more green space and sucking more water from our aquifer. The difference in this race is I'm not financially backed by AI data center lobbyists and never will be, like Apple, Google, and Facebook, Southern Group and other lobbyists who are representing them are not financially backing me in this campaign. And I will continue putting Florida first. And absolutely, I'm opposed to more data centers.
All right. Any follow-up?
Well,
One minute.
I like to know who they are because I think, if I was to get my campaign paid for it, might make it easier. But again, I have no idea who Rawson is talking about. But again, I'm against data centers. I want to make that clear.
Okay.
I mean, I mentioned a few of the consultant groups, lobby groups who are supporting data centers that are behind you. Southern Group being one. I mean, look to see who's representing Apple, Google, and Facebook, and then you can follow the money trail.
Okay. So, number 5, and this one is for you, Mr. Rawson. Should law enforcement be using flock cameras in Florida? Why or why not?
Yeah, this is clearly a controversial topic. To me, this systematic issue is why there is a desire and need for flock cameras in the first place. You have a systematic breakdown of the family, of God and government and in the home. And so I would like to address those first. It does concern me that we're leading to a Orwellian state with the use of flock cameras. That is a concern. I think there's some Fourth Amendment concerns that follow it. I want law enforcement to have tools that they need to stop bad guys. And I think for the most part, obviously that is what it's used for. I think there can be abuse if put in the wrong hands. Like I said, I want to fight the breakdown of society from the get-go when it comes to the family, when it comes to, getting God back in government and back into society. And if we address those things, I think we can nuke flock cameras too.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Brandon, same question to you.
Well, I kind of want to address one thing. You was talking about the Fourth Amendment, which pertains to search and seizure of properties. I don't think flock cameras necessarily pertain to that, but I think part of the problem is with the flock cameras is courts have said, your expectation of privacy ends at the front door when you leave your house. So, but again, I'm a little hesitant too because I'm not about the collecting of people's private information as they travel all over the country or the state, perhaps. But I am against the collecting of people's data. But again, we do know flock cameras do help law enforcement people catch criminals. And I know there was a case down in Union County where a woman and her friend was killed by her ex-husband, and a flock camera was able to catch him and was able to catch him on the side of the road. He did, unfortunately, shoot himself, so we were not able to prosecute him. Again, it does stop crimes, but I am very, very leery about collecting people's information. If anything, I think there should be huge guardrails against make sure how we collect this information to make sure that it's not abused or used in a wrongful manner.
Are you in favor of the property tax amendment that will be on the ballot in November? And there's a few follow-ups to this, but because it's kind of an extensive question, we're going to break it into pieces. So
Absolutely. I do think property taxes are high. I'm a real estate business owner, so my property taxes are way through the roof on all my properties. But it's about how we're going to provide meaningful tax relief. And I certainly think, we need to make sure property taxes go down, but we also need to address the question of how we're going to pay for our policemen, our firefighters, our garbage collectors, how roads get maintained. Fortunately, here in Baker or Bradford, Union, Columbia, we do a pretty good job of managing our budgets. But again, there's always going to be room for improvement. It's not to say that we can't say the same for, unfortunately, for Alachua County, where we see their budget go bust every year. But again, it's about providing meaningful tax relief. And certainly we do need to decrease our property taxes while making sure our counties out here are taken care of.
I am in favor of the property tax amendment that will be on the ballot in November. I don't think it goes quite far enough. We need. I think what we can make up the difference is with sales tax. Increase sales tax a few percentage point. Few percent. Excuse me, and it'll make up the difference for most of what we need for local government. But you know what? Quite frankly, local government has shown to be out of control across the board, and there's a lot of bloat in government. So I do support a haircut across the board for local government. That being said, we could increase sales taxes a few percent to make up the difference. If we facilitate homegrown businesses here in Baker or Bradford County, wherever, and don't become a bedroom community of somewhere else like Gainesville or Jacksonville, then we'll also be more sustainable and won't be relying on Tallahassee to bring grants to the district year after year. And I support those initiatives.
I want to make sure that, like I said, we provide meaningful tax relief. I'm also leery of increasing our sales tax because it does disproportionately affect our poor people. Those people don't tend to own homes. They tend to only rent from people that do own homes and things like that. So I do want to address that. And also, we got to be sure, again, like you said, taking care of our people out here. And there was actually a pretty good idea. Instead of having to go through a grant program to Tallahassee to try to beg for this money, there could be a funding formula to make sure our counties get taken care of. And that's certainly a pathway forward.
Okay. Any follow-up to that?
Yeah, I would like to follow up. I support utilizing some sales taxes because it's a fair and equitable tax across the board. And the truth is, wealthy folks spend more too. And so, it's a tax that everybody has to pay, not just some, where others have to foot the burden. And I do not support that. So I support the usage of a consumption tax over property taxes.
If that amendment passes as it's written, how do you recommend the local governments fill the gap left by the loss of revenue?
Yeah, of course. Just mentioned a minute ago, a few percent in sales tax would make up the difference for most of the revenue. But like I said, government is out of control across the board. I got 5 children. I run 2 farms. I'm running a campaign right now. You look at my campaign finance reports. If you look at my financial disclosures, did not make much money this year because I was campaigning. And that being said, I know what it's like to have to tighten my belt and save for a rainy day. Local government can learn to do the same.
Well, I think this is where you kind of have to have an effective legislator to be able to talk about these issues. Again, sales tax is one way, but again, I'm very careful about increasing taxes anywhere. And again, I do think sales taxes do disproportionately affect poor people. And I think, if anything, what the governor had proposed originally the first time was to have a little trust fund to pay for all these fiscally constrained counties. And I think that is something we definitely need to be looking into, try to make sure our counties get funded, but also do want to be very careful that, it's not just merely a trust fund that we have to come back every year to beg the money for. I do think it should be more of a funding formula that, the counties can kind of look to try to figure out, what's going to be in their budget next year, so that way they don't have to beg for money. And legislators come in and kind of help, appropriate money for certain projects around the county, as we've been doing for the last 8 years. So again, that's kind of where I kind of come at it.
So what legislation would you favor to bring property tax relief to homeowners if the amendment doesn't pass?
That's a good one. If anything, it should be like, we should do what the governor has talked about, up the homestead exemption from 50. I think it needs to be a tiered program. I do think immediate tax relief would throw a lot of budgets in flux, so we just got to be very careful about it. We can do a tiered step program to provide relief and give consistency and stability across all of our governments. So we go from 50 to 150 to 250 to 500. Again, that is something that legislatures have to talk about. It's not like, one person can do it. That's why, legislature is about consensus, about building relationships. And that's what it be about.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
Yes, sorry.
What legislation would you favor to bring property tax relief to homeowners if the current amendment doesn't pass?
Mm-hmm. If it does not pass?
Yes, if it does not pass.
Okay. I'm glad
Yeah.
I asked the question.
Yes.
Well, we got to go back to the drawing board, clearly. I think it needs to be across the board. Like, I think it needs to be more aggressive tax relief than we currently have. Not just non-Valderium taxes, but across the board, we need to be cutting back on what government is spending, locally. This is other people's money we're dealing with, and government needs some restraint.
In addition to property tax reform, as we've just discussed, what other cost-saving inflation reduction measures would you pursue as a state lawmaker?
Well, I think it's a travesty that we passed government-mandated minimum wage in 2020. It made nobody wealthier except the trial lawyers. And it sounds good until you get to the grocery store and everything has gone up accordingly. So I would like to see government-mandated minimum wage reversed, given back to the market. The market should determine wages, not government. That is one way we could handle it for sure.
Well, I don't know if I would call it inflation, but I think we certainly can ease the gas off on their gas tax. And certainly, because the state of Florida kind of relies upon that, and our gas bill has been so high, we can certainly ease the bill off of that. And there's some other things too, like, grocery bills are high. Maybe there should be some relief for that. And of course, another good one to be talking about is the prices of housing is going through the roof, especially as families kind of start out and they want to have a home for their family and be able to build their families out. Maybe there should be some kind of program for young new families to be able to build or buy new homes. So that's something we kind of look into.
Okay. Any follow up to that?
I mean, I'd be curious what you mean, Chase, as far as relief for young people being able to purchase a home. Yeah, could you flesh that out for me? I'm curious.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
You got a minute.
I think it just depends on where they kind of stand in their life. What kind of occupation they have. Like policemen and firefighters, they have programs to help build homes like that, and I think they call it like a Florida Heroes program. So maybe that is some way we can try to take a form of that program and put it towards people that actually need homes and people that maybe work at a different set of society that we're not thinking about, like teachers, maybe county workers, maybe people that just started out in life just need a hand up.
Okay.
So this would be a taxpayer subsidy. Is that essentially what you're?
No, it's just relief. It's against their taxes.
So they would have to. So it would go against their income tax. What if they are paying no?
No, it's just like the Florida Heroes home.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair. And I was generally curious. I wasn't. Yeah.
So in recent years, the state legislature has passed many laws eroding home rule and land use and housing, growth and development, disaster recovery, and other local rulemaking, in addition to creating unfunded mandates. Should the state fund all mandates? And do you favor more or less home rule for counties and municipalities?
Well, I'll put it this way. I'm for home rule because we don't know, nobody knows the community better than people that live there. I've always been for home rule. And I think, we don't want to be Jacksonville, Orlando, or Miami. So I think, we know what's best for our community. So we certainly need to be in favor of home rule. And as for these mandates, I think that's where the state's got to be very careful. I've always been leery of mandates. Like, for example, we went through the COVID-19 pandemic. That was basically a mandate to shut down the state of Florida. So I've always been very leery of mandates. And of course, if the state does a mandate, we need to make sure that we're not harming our communities all across the state of Florida. We're not Tampa, Orlando, Miami. We just don't have that money. So if anything, we need to be smart about how we do mandates, and we need to make sure that people get taken care of. And that's where, an effective legislator needs to come in and say, hey, I think we need to pump the brakes on this and make sure that we're not harming ourselves in these small rural communities and not benefiting cities or big counties or anything like that. That's where I feel about it, but I am for home rule.
Yeah, states absolutely should be funding their mandates. And like I said earlier, in contrast to current House leadership, current House representation in this district, I will fight preemption in Tallahassee. I've spoken at planning and zoning meetings here in this district in favor of home rule and against, out of control growth and sprawl, that costs the taxpayer money and destroys, the Florida that we love. It decreases our quality of living here in North Florida. So I'm against preemption unless it comes down to our constitutional rights. When it comes to constitutional rights, Tallahassee should preempt local municipalities when it comes to protecting folks' First Amendment, Second Amendment rights, whatever it is, because local government can get out of control, and we need broad, state protection there.
The state legislature's rapid expansion of school choice programs have caused a massive loss in students and FTE funding for public school systems, thus resulting in a crisis in public education. Do you think that programs should be overhauled or expanded?
I think there needs to be a balance. And my concern with teachers is teacher pay. Not the entry-level teacher pay, but the ceiling for teachers, and quite frankly for law enforcement, correctional officers too. The ceiling is too high, and a lot of this is caused by unions that suppress it. I am for school choice, and I will defend, a mother and father's ability to homeschool their child. And I don't think that a parent that homeschools their child should have to pay for somebody else's education down the road. That being said, mass subsidies I don't think is necessarily the solution either. So I would like to see folks who private school their children or homeschool their children be exempt from the school board portion of their property taxes, but there needs to be balance.
I think there's some things that can be definitely fixed about it. I'll put it this way. I never promoted for school choice, but not at the expense of public schools. I think if anything, things can be made, always be made more efficient. My mother was a school principal at Westside Elementary. She actually passed away when I was 13 on the way to a teacher's conference. And I always remember she always told me, public schools are the foundation of everybody's education for the most part. So most people go to public schools, and we got to make sure that, our public schools are taken care of without being at the expense of everybody else. And the private schools, I think there is a place for them, because I did go to a private school when I was real young. In fact, I had cookery plants. This is how I'm able to hear and communicate with you. And I went to a school in Jacksonville called Hart Jacksonville in speech and hearing. And I was able to read, learn, write, and be able to communicate. But it's going to be a very fine balance. We got to make sure our public schools get taken care of. And I certainly don't agree with a ceiling, because I feel like, if you put in so much time doing your service, you should be, recognized and rewarded for your work, especially as a police officer, as a teacher, as a correctional officer. We need to make sure we take care of these people, because they put in 30 years. They ought to deserve to be paid that much.
Thank you for having me out again. I'm Marshall Rawson. I've been a citizens advocate for 15 years here in North Florida. I've defended our monuments. I've gotten the strongest pro-life resolutions passed, and the county resolutions passed in the state of Florida. I've defended our Second Amendment, and we need to preserve our agricultural lands and our wild Florida for future generations. We're at a turning point here in American society where most of our food is coming from across the world, not from homegrown, commodities here in the United States. And that's a concern of mine. And it's certainly one of the biggest reasons why I'm running, is because of the rapid deterioration of our agricultural lands and our wild Florida that we call home. And so I'll fight tooth and nail in the legislature every day in defense of these things and bring Florida first policies that put Floridians above the rest of the world.
All right. Thank you so much. And we appreciate you joining us. And Mr. Brannon, you have 2 minutes to see us out.
Thank you. Well, again, my name's Chase Brannon. I'm running for State House District 10, which covers Baker, Bradford, Union, Columbia, and north part of Washington County. I'm the homegrown guy. I've been here all my life and understand, the issues here. And I've known everybody here all my life. People who have supported me at my worst moments, people I've supported at their worst moments. And I always tell my campaigns about two things: keeping our state clean and our fiscal house in order. And I've been very fortunate to be able to work in state government for 6 years for Governor Ron DeSantis and for the CFO, Jimmy Petronis, two of the strongest conservative men I've ever had the honor of working for. And I want to be an effective legislator to be able to bring, results back to our community, because it's not about, you got to work with 160 or really 159 people in the state legislature, 40 senators and 120 House members. You got to be a builder of relationships. You can't be a divider. You can't be the single man alone. In order to get things done, you got to have consensus amongst the Republican colleagues and perhaps maybe some Democrats, but that's another discussion for another day. But you got to be able to build a consensus. You got to be able to get results. You got to be able to get appropriations back to our community. And I want to be the results guy. I want to be your legislator. I want to be your neighbor. I want to be your friend. I always say, vote Chase Brannon. I'm pro-life. I'm pro-Second Amendment. And I'm anti-tax. August 18th is when the election.
All right. Well, I appreciate both of y'all coming by, joining us.